Hello Wargamers, I'm Slick from Tabletop Banter, and today I'm going to be talking about the second step in painting your miniatures from a bog standard grey model to a tabletop ready model. So if you haven't already watched the first video, I will leave a link in the description below to that, because really you need to know that step before you do this step. But just if you don't want to skip back and watch it, basically step one was keep it neat, keep it in the lines, but there's a bit more detailing in there, so I would recommend going back to watch that. As for today, I'm going to show you how I highlight models. Now, as I did mention in that also in that previous video, my highlighting technique is possibly a bit too simple for other people. I take the main colour. So the first model I'm going to show you is this Orc Boy. Now I take the main colour off this. Now for me, the one that I want to stand out is the flesh. So I take the Warg green and I find a colour that's a bit lighter. So, well, here's the Warg flesh, and the colour I'm choosing to highlight it with today is Moot green. That's primarily because those are the two green colours I have, but I find that the Moot green really works as it just gives another dimension to the model. And so, yeah, I'm just going to move this camera down and we're going to have a look, and I'll show you how I do that. So here we have the Orc Boy. He is ready to be painted. The main thing you need to do is get a brush, which is a rough edged brush, nothing fancy. You don't want to ruin a nice brush. This cost me 99p, I think. And you'll need a piece of tissue as well. So first thing you want to do, just quickly wash the brush in my water. And then you take the Moot green, give it a shake. There we go. Now, dip the end of the brush in the paint and get rid of the bulk of it on here until what you see is this thin green layer as you gently go over the tissue. Now I don't know if that shows up or not. Okay, there we are. And then apply it to the areas that you want to highlight. Now these tend to be raised areas, so on the Orc you'll be looking for the more muscly areas. And you just gently apply that to those areas, the areas that stand up a bit. Very soft brush over the top of the flesh. Nothing too crazy. Just want to highlight some of the more standout features. Okay. So then you end up with more than one colour, providing a bit more texture. And I'm also going to do this for the other arm. So same again, keep brushing it into the paper until you get a really thin layer, and then you go about gently. Now, be prepared to make a few mistakes. I mean, when I started doing this, I put way too much on the first time and it just looked like I repainted his arm. Easy mistake to make that. So be gentle and be patient when you're doing it for the first few times, especially if it is a model you don't want to mess up. I mean, obviously you don't want to mess up any, but with an Orc Boy you can probably get away with it, whereas with a Space Marine captain or something, you don't really want to be making too many mistakes. So there's that second arm. When you come on, well, I need to do the front and the inside of those actually, so I'll do those now. You can tend to use some of the leftover paint from the paper if you're conscious about spending, as being a student I am ever so slightly. So yeah, same again, just find the slightly raised areas and press down ever so slightly harder on those than you do the rest. And don't forget the fingers as part of the hand there. And there we have it. That's that arm all done too. So the face. Now the face is a bit harder, primarily because there are more features to it. So take a bit more care when you're highlighting the face. Although this is my way of highlighting, the actual technique is called dry brushing, for those who don't already know. And I just find it's a really easy way to get a second colour on a large surface area, like at the body like this. Now you don't have to be too careful, because later steps will show you that if it's not quite right, it is easily fixed with the washing phase. And don't forget to really get under here, and especially with Orc Boys, because they've got their chins and their neck parts. It's also need highlighting. Now that's a bit heavy, so to rescue that, get the paint off and just try and blend a bit. There we go. fix that. And then at the top, don't forget the neck as well. I should have enough paint left on here. If I don't, I'll just pick up a little more. No, there we go, that's enough. So yeah, try not to miss any of the detail areas that you want to be highlighting. I still need to do the inside of that hand actually, so I will do that now as well. Picking up paint off this to save a bit of money. And then in here, just again, raised areas get the paint, and that means that the slightly deeper areas, like more shadow areas, remain darker. It just tends to look a little more effective that way. And there you have it. I'll move the camera up so I can get a better view of that. There is my slightly highlighted orc. I will post a few pictures up after this video so that you can see the real effect that it has on bringing out a second texture and all the details that you need for that. Okay. Hello, now that we've seen the Orc Boy done, I'm going to show you the Tactical Marine Sergeant that I have mentioned that I would also be doing alongside this for various reasons, but predominantly to show you flesh detailing. So first things first, we're going to do his power armour. So as you can see here, it's a nice simple colour scheme, as I said, my Korcarian Crimsons. Now I've actually done a little bit of the highlighting already on his knee parts of his leg power armour. And now that's because I haven't done a lot of highlighting before on Space Marines. Only a little bit on the Orc models, and that's because I thought it would be a bit easier. So I'm challenging myself with these videos and trying to teach you, the viewers, how I would do it, and teaching me at the same time on how I'm going to do it, if that makes sense. So I'm going to pop this fella down for a bit, and I'm going to go back to the primary rule of thumb for picking a highlighting colour is pick something a couple of tones lighter. So the main colour of my power armour is the Citadel Administratum Grey, and the colour I'm going to choose to highlight it is quite a bit brighter, but it seems to work, which is the White Scar colour. Now, again, these are mainly because these are the colours I have, but on first glance, it looks like a White Scar is the perfect colour for matching up with the Administratum Grey in terms of highlighting. So I'm going to move the camera down and we're going to start highlighting this Sergeant. Okay, so as before, here is the paintbrush, the rough-edged paintbrush that cost me 99p. Here is our Tactical Marine, and shake the paint. Okay, so again, chosen White Scar might be a bit too bright, but I think it could work on the whole model. I mean, I've tried a bit on the leg bits, so let's take a bit on the edge and just get rid of the most of it so it becomes... Oh, I'm going to give this another wash actually. There. So, bit of paint on the end of the brush. Get rid of most of it and start to wear it down, and then very, very gently, I'm just going to move him this way so you can see a bit more, apply to the raised areas. Now obviously for a Space Marine there are less raised areas than Orcs. They can't help that, they didn't choose to do that. But it means that there is less to highlight as such, except with this now, I've chosen to highlight the raised areas and move down so it's thicker on the raised areas and lighter on the non-raised areas. So I'm in fact dry brushing almost all of the power armor now, as opposed to with the Orc Boys just doing the raised parts. But it's a slightly thicker dry brush when it comes to the sharper knee edges, and a slightly thinner one when it comes to the other areas. So I'm just going to, once again, set up my paintbrush for this leg. There we go. So again, thicker on the knee parts, slightly thinner on the leg bits, and you'll just see it adding another texture. There we go. So, yeah, pretty happy with that so far. Might just add a bit more onto this knee bit up here. Keep it very thin for parts that aren't raised. Okay, just Purity Seal starting to slip there. And now we'll come to the arms. So, let's see what paint I have there. Not enough. Okay. For the elbow pads, I'm going to be going over just the edges gently. Now again, I shall say that this is not the way that everyone chooses to do their highlighting, but I think it works because it just makes the highlight less stand out, but slightly more realistic. So as opposed to big lines of paint, as I have seen on some models, this just provides little lines, scruffs, if you like. Wear and tear highlighting is what I should probably be calling it, I suppose. And again, just the edges here. Onto the other arm. I definitely have enough paint on this part of the tissue paper. So, and just here. That was a little heavy, but it doesn't look like it's gone too poorly. So yeah, don't forget, keep it nice and light, because if it's light, it just looks a little better. And better come around for the inside of the arm. So like I said, this is a bit trial and error with the Space Marines. Can't say I've highlighted them in a great deal before. Onto the main chest part now. Again, higher raised parts get more, deeper parts get less. Same principle with the Orc. And I am only doing the grey in the power armour because that's the only one that really needs doing. The rest is all fairly simple. I could do the shoulder pads, however I do not have a lighter blue, and I don't think it will make that much of a difference in terms of the style if I did, so I don't see the point in spending money on a paint I'm not going to use. Onto the back, so again, just the same principle really. Plenty of paint on to begin with, use it to get rid of it, and then I'm going to go onto the backpack now, I think, actually, and just lightly go over the tops. And it just adds another texture, and it can make the big difference. Now, I firmly believe that this step is slightly less important than the step to follow, but that does not mean it's not important, because I think a well highlighted model really stands out, whereas a well washed model just looks good in general. So, but as I said, washing, that's going to come later on. Let's not worry about that just yet. And we continue to do gently over the power armour, slightly thicker for edges, and keep dry brushing it on. It is just to make it not one blob of colour, really. That is the primary reason I like doing the dry brushing, because it adds multiple layers of the same colour, sort of like, so it looks like the whole armour's grey, but it's not. That's really the crux of it. So just going to finish the back of his leg there, just again keeping it gentle. Not got a lot of paint on, so I can be a little more aggressive. But there we go. I'm just going to move the camera up to give you a slightly closer look. And there you have it. Now, it might not be so clear on this camera again, as I've mentioned in previous videos. Hopefully we're getting a new one of those soon. But I will post a few pictures of this Sergeant with the new brushing and compare it to the old stuff, as I have with the Orcs. And yeah, so let's take a look at those. Now that we've had a good look at the power armour, it is time to move on to the flesh. Now that is the main reason that I have chosen to include the Tactical Marine Sergeant. Oh, that's not the right one. So, now that we've got him here and we've dry brushed that power armour to make it just stand out a bit more, you don't want the model's face looking like you've just slapped on one colour, because if you look at my face, it's not one colour, and if you look at your own, it's not one straight colour. So, I did start by pasting on one colour, which is completely fine. I mean, this one has a breathing mask of some kind, and I chose Leadbelcher for that because I just thought it would look more metallic and more cool, if you like, so that's what I've put on there. However, for the skin of his head, I used the Citadel Base Rat Skin Flesh. Pretty standard. I have been told it is a bit dark. I quite like that, because after I've dry brushed on this next layer, it just adds like more depth. So I'm choosing to use the Ushabti bone as a highlight. I have a friend who uses really strange colour highlights like red and purple. For me, it's not what I want from it, but I will show you how to add more colours in the washing technique, which is really where the face takes shape. So don't worry if it doesn't look too right at the moment, because what you will see in the next step is more tones added in. So this is really just for it to not be one colour, but more tones are added when you do the washing phase. So I'm just going to move you down so we can have a closer look. And there is our Sargent. So I'm just going to wash the paintbrush. This brush will need thoroughly washing, because otherwise you'll get mixed colours from your highlighting. So you do want to make sure this brush is clean. This one isn't very clean, but it still does the job just about. So I'm going to shake the paint. Alright. Same as before. Exactly the same process. You blob the paint in. And on this you want it to be a really thin layer. It's quite important it's thin, because it does seem to show up more on flesh than before. So I'm just going to move them a little closer to the camera and apply a very gentle top coat. Now, if you notice it's not applying enough, you just press down a little harder. So for me, it's taking a little bit long to get this dry brush on, which means I haven't got a lot of paint on it. So I do need to press a little bit harder. But that's okay, it's better to have it that way than you start pressing too hard and you just blobbed a load of paint on his head. Let's get these side parts as well. It's not too much of a worry if you don't take a great deal of care as into keeping it on his head, but I will say it looks better if you spend longer on it. I mean, it doesn't seem to clash too much with the colours like Leadbelcher, especially once you put a wash on. You barely notice if you've gone outside the lines when it comes to dry brushing. So it's not as key as when you're just painting to keep it in the lines, but if you really want the best effect, then I suppose keeping it neat is important. Again, don't worry about the colour of the eyes. I've already painted mine. I like to do my eyes first, so I just know what colour I'm going to go for. But it's not too much of a worry if you haven't painted those yet and you choose to do that in a later step. So let's just make sure I've got all of the face dry brushed. Might have missed this side, so let's go over that again. There we go, just making sure that I haven't left anywhere, because you can notice a bit more once you've done the highlighting where you haven't highlighted, which might sound obvious, but the first time I tried to do flesh for a model, it didn't go as planned, because I left big blotches and I didn't check enough as to whether I'd highlighted everything sufficiently. Okay, so I'm just going to move this up. There we go. Now, there is the flesh for our model all done. Now you can just see it probably looks less one colour. Now I am going to put up some pictures after this, and I will sign off before I do so, but it just looks less one colour, more realistic as a flesh colour. Now I know there aren't all the facial tones like blushing, etc., which happens all over the face, not just your cheeks, so I'm not going to do big red circles on his cheeks so he looks embarrassed. That's not the plan, but you will see in the next step more tones added to it. So I've been Slick from Tabletop Banter. Thank you very much for watching. There will be another video after this where I will go over washing. Not doing your own washing, obviously. I meant washing the miniatures, and that adds a whole new dimension, and that is the one that makes the biggest difference. So yeah, thank you very much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave any comments below if you like the way I do things or don't like the way I do things and want me to, or have criticism for me to listen to, or if you have any other questions at all, feel free to comment below and ask me, and have fun.